So what is PIF? Well, PIF stands for the Profit Index Factor. PIF is a calculated, profitable pricing factor, and it's unique for each business. The PIF formula blends all your operating costs and profit goals with the shop's capacity to sell and produce gross profit dollars at some specific rate, like, for example, dollars per hour. Now, it's based on the total operating expenses plus profit, and then that's divided by the adjusted capacity of the business. Adjusted capacity. What is adjusted capacity? Well, adjusted capacity is determined by taking all the production labor, and we include it in the operating expense, and it's used to calculate the total production hours. Now, the total production hours are then adjusted. Just because somebody comes to work 40 hours a week doesn't really mean that they're available for 40 hours to do work. We need to adjust for things like holidays and vacations, paid breaks, sick days, technical proficiency, comebacks, things like this, the test drives that a technician may go on that he doesn't charge for. All of these things affect how many hours they're available to produce work, or determine their available production hours. But just because the hours are available doesn't mean we can sell them. Available hours need to be adjusted again, and they're adjusted for the prevailing market conditions. In other words, how many hours can you sell? So once we've done that, we've adjusted for that, we then know what our adjusted capacity is for our shop. So you see, adjusted capacity depends on really three things. How many technicians we have, how many hours we're buying, how many of those hours are more or less adjusted away due to circumstances, and what are the prevailing market conditions, the constraints that the market puts on us to limit how many we can sell. Now, PIF is determined then by combining your operating expenses, your debt service, and certain production costs together with your owner's salary and your profit goal. And then we take that total number and we divide it by the shop's adjusted capacity. And then that's uniquely blended with some other variable costs to determine the PIF. The PIF is the amount that you actually need to charge per billable unit that you sell. Now, in most businesses, and especially in the case of automotive repair, the billable units are labor hours. Now, that number has nothing to do with your shop labor rate. It is a management or a financial management factor that's used to determine profitability. Why is PIF important now? Well, from the beginning, our industry's business model was flawed. We just didn't know it. Frankly, we were making so much money that we didn't even care. Even if someone said it was flawed, we wouldn't have cared. In fact, we were making so much money that we didn't even know there was a problem with our business model. So, you might say we were accidentally making money. And we did it by tracking things like total numbers of jobs. How many jobs do we do per week? The total average repair order, or TARO, that we generated each week, where we divide all the money that we sold by the total number of jobs we did. That would give us a total average repair order. We would compare it by some formula, total sales against gross profit. We would track parts costs as they were a percentage of sales. So we would take your parts costs. Let's say you sold $500,000 in a year and you had $100,000 in parts costs, and we'd say, well, our parts costs run 20% of sales. And we would try to go toward a target like that as an example. We would use the same sort of formula for labor costs, tracking labor costs as a percentage of sales. We would also try other types of tricky formulas like, I'm going to sell so many dollars for every technician that's on my staff full time. I don't know where that idea ever came from. We were simply accidents looking for a place to happen. This model left profit to chance. We would set sales goals, yes. We did that. We tried to keep our parts costs within certain percentages, and there were models that were kind of handed around the industry about what those percentages should be. And we tried to keep our labor costs within certain percentages as well. And we tried to keep our overhead as low as possible. And there were even some formulas out for what percentage of your sales maybe your overhead should be. But we were settling for the leftovers. We were simply leaving profit to chance. Everything that was left over was profit. In the past, admittedly, we were happy with what that profit number was. But the fact is, we were only lucky. We were just lucky. For many of us, though, luck's running out. Our jobs are fewer in number. Our costs are ever increasing. Prices of help have skyrocketed. The prices of facilities have jumped immensely. The prices of parts obviously have gone up, at least on a per ticket basis. Comebacks are more frequent, and unfortunately they're more costly because of the new technology. Profits are simply getting harder and harder to realize every day. The situation needs attention, and it needs it now. The traditional pricing method used book hours times a shop labor rate to determine our labor price on a job. Now, I don't know where the shop labor rates came from. There are some formulas out there how to back into some sort of a number and say this is what you should charge per hour for your labor. But they really didn't make much sense when it boiled right down to it because they ignored so many of their other aspects of the business. So that was how we determined our labor price, though. And parts markup was taking our parts cost times some markup to determine what we're going to sell the parts for. And there were markup formulas all over the board. Then we were supposed to take these two numbers, add them together, combine them, and that would equal our selling price. Hopefully a profitable selling price. The only thing I can tell you for sure about it was that it was a selling price. And there was a formula in place for determining it. But whether it was profitable or not, we wouldn't even know until, 30, 60, 90 days out when we get a statement from our accountant. And that was only a combination of all the jobs. We wouldn't know on a job-by-job basis if we were profitable. We'd know if we charged more than what the parts cost. That was pretty obvious. But did we have enough to cover all the other costs? Then we just hoped that there was enough money to cover overhead and profit. Historically, profits were so large that even our seat-of-the-pants pricing methods worked just fine for us. The simple truth is, if our pricing system worked then, it would still be working now.
We discovered that our real profit driver never was a combination of parts and labor.
It was, and it always has been, a function of time and time alone. We just didn't know it. We were lucky. The parts made it easier for us to justify our prices, and our huge margins camouflaged the truth from us. Today, we need to be able to make money on jobs that don't even have any parts in them at all. We've all had the experience of spending hours on a car only to find out that it had a bad connection. No parts. We need to make money on that job. We also need to make money on the other extreme. When we have to buy an entire replacement unit like an engine or a transmission or a differential or a transfer case, we need to make money on those jobs too. And we need to make money on everything in between, the normal, what we might call old-fashioned parts and labor jobs. It's kind of like the 700R4 transmission. Now I know some of you watching weren't in the transmission business or aren't in the transmission business. And so I'm going to share a little bit of this story with you so you'll understand what I'm getting at. First of all, when the 700R4 transmission first came out, it had a harsh 3-2 coast downshift, meaning when you'd slow to a stop, as it shifted automatically from third to second, there would be a bump. Now, they all did it and there wasn't any way to fix it. And if someone came in complaining, they would usually come in and say, geez, I've had this, and since it was new, it did this, and the dealership said they can't do anything about it. Can you do something about it? And we would say, it's just the way they work. In essence, we were denying that there was a problem because we didn't have a way to fix the problem. Then someone came up with a fix for it, a way to eliminate it. It was a kit that you would install in the transmission. And it was a pretty good price attached to doing it. So we were all, in the transmission business, we were all eager to sell the solution to this problem that didn't exist yesterday. Now it's a problem. Now it's something we can sell. You see, until there was a solution, we didn't recognize it as a problem. The problem was always there. We just refused to acknowledge it. Now there's a solution to the financial problems that we're facing in our businesses today. The PIF family of products provide a better way for you to determine profitable prices, for you to track results, for you to manage your business, and for you to control profitability, and most importantly, to boost your bottom line. Pricing with PIF software. PIF software automatically determines the profitable selling price of a job. Underline that. Notice that. It determines the profitable selling price of the job, as opposed to traditional pricing methods where we took parts and labor and displayed them on a repair order to justify a selling price. In the past, we used that method to not only justify, but we were trying to determine the selling price. And like I said before, it only determined a selling price. It didn't determine a profitable selling price. So one more time, the PIF model determines the profitable selling price. It determines what you need to sell the job for. The traditional fashion is how you would display it, because that's the way most customers are used to seeing it. So many dollars of labor for this job, so many dollars for parts for this job added together, and this is what the customer is going to pay. It also makes it easier for us to package and sell the job or justify the selling price. So in summary, you'll know exactly how much you'll make after all of your overhead, all your labor, and all your parts are allocated to a job. You'll also be able to simply enter the labor time and the parts cost, and the rest of the complicated calculations get done instantly. You'll be able to compare profits on jobs and make better decisions to prioritize your work better, and you'll be able to pinpoint your specialties, the things that you're most profitable at, and know when to buy or when to rebuild a unit. And PIF is the only pricing method that will absolutely calculate the right price on each and every job as you're doing it. Thanks for taking a few minutes with us. I hope you enjoyed the session.